Tonight, the electric car revolution.
For some months during lockdown, it was electric vehicles that outsold all other cars.
A change that could help save the planet.
We've got a serious climate emergency. If you don't want your car use restricted, then you have got to change the car that you drive, because it's one or the other.
But how smooth is the switchover?
You need to give people confidence that they're going to be able to find a charging point wherever they are and actually be able to access it.
And are we really ready to go electric?
The cars have arrived, the infrastructure is years behind.
Just got 3 crosses. No, dead duck. Doesn't work.
Good evening and welcome to the Tonight programme. In just 15 years' time, the government has said that the sale of all new petrol, diesel and hybrid cars will be banned. But how ready are we to embrace electric cars? The research for Tonight suggests nearly half of us are interested in buying one. The vast majority still think they're too expensive. Motoring journalist Ginny Buckley has been finding out more.
My job means that I get to test drive lots of new cars, and increasingly this means electric. I've even set up a website to review them. At a starting cost of more than £83,000, this electric Porsche is not your average runaround. But electric cars in general are starting to become more mainstream. Like this Kia, one of over 150 new models coming our way over the next 4 years. And of course, there's also been another recent development. As with so many areas of life, the coronavirus pandemic has had a huge impact on the car industry. The production lines ground to a halt, and there's confusion about how quickly and how fully it can recover. But there has been another side to the story. So, Edmund, we've been through one of the most challenging times in our history, and of course we're still going through it. How has coronavirus impacted the way we travel and also the way we're likely to travel in the future?
A lot of people have got used to walking short distances, running, cycling, etc. I think psychologically it's got people to think, do I really need the car for all those journeys? And therefore, ironically, it should help people to choose electric, because once they understand that you don't need to use your car every day to go to the shops, but use it when it's crucial, then electric vehicle can do that. And for some months during lockdown, it was electric vehicles that outsold all other cars.
The number of new fully electric cars being sold went up by 175% in the first 7 months of the year. But it's still only 4.7% of total sales. However, as part of the government's attempts to tackle climate change, by 2035, if you want a brand new car, a zero-emissions model will be your only choice.
That is a radical step forward. We'll need much more infrastructure. We'll need to change the way we drive our cars, the way we think about our cars. So I think we do need to convince consumers that these cars are good, these cars are viable.
So, are UK car buyers ready to embrace electric cars for the sake of the planet? Ask people about them, and you get a very mixed response. The government is bringing a ban on the sale of new petrol and diesel cars from 2035. What do you think about that?
Very progressive and important. 2035, you said? It's a bit late, maybe. I feel like it should be done now. We can't wait.
I'm concerned about the power supply. Where's all the extra electricity going to come from?
I'm a bit sceptical, to be honest. I'm someone who drives down to London quite regularly. Most of the best electrical cars, other than the Tesla, which is very overpriced, can hold charge for about 240 miles. So if you need to go any further than that, I'm just not sure how practical it is, really.
Ready?
Yeah.
In 2018, I made a Tonight film about cars and discovered that some electric models can be surprisingly fast. Like this Tesla, for example. Self-confessed petrol head Mark Baden and his wife Di were sceptical, but agreed to test out an electric car for the programme. After getting used to the unfamiliar charging systems, they found they really liked the experience of driving an electric car. But a trip from Yorkshire to London, where they couldn't get some of the chargers to work, caused so-called range anxiety to kick in.
We're down to 6% on the battery. We've got 5 miles. Mark's in a bit of a state.
The nightmare, of course, is if we do break down, it's not a case of sending somebody for a gallon of fuel.
No, we don't know how long we'll have to wait for somebody to come out.
They made it to London, but the journey took nearly 7 hours, twice the usual time. And that was enough to put them off the idea of going electric altogether. Well, nearly 2 years later, and Mark and Di are back. This time, we've had a home charger installed for them. And we've got a different car for them to try too, being delivered to their doorstep.
Hello, you
Hi,
two!
Ginny.
How are you?
It's a Mini.
It is.
Love it.
Who wants the keys?
Me.
The car that we've chosen for you, the Mini Electric, has a relatively low range, around 140 miles. But Mini did loads of research into the distances that their owners drive, and the average was 26 miles a day.
That's about an average of what I would do.
Are you planning any longer journeys?
We're planning another London trip.
Okay. Just promise me one thing. No Italian job stunts, okay?
We'll catch up with Mark and Di later to see how they get on. In a joint survey with the AA, we asked more than 17,000 people in the UK their opinion about electric cars. We found that nearly half of the respondents would consider buying an electric car as their next vehicle. But a massive 82% of people said they thought electric cars were too expensive. So cost seems to be one of the major factors that puts people off. Electric cars do tend to be more expensive to buy, but the lower running costs could mean it's actually cheaper in the long term. Peugeot did some research that suggested over an average distance of 145 miles, petrol and diesel drivers would spend a respective £16.50 and £14.90 in a family car like the 208. By switching to the electric version, a similar journey would cost just £5.18 when using a standard home charge point, although it would cost more than that on most public chargers. But what about battery life? In our study with the AA, 2/3 of people said they would be worried about battery range, while just over half were concerned about how long the car's batteries will last. However, battery technology is improving all the time.
The UK has been at the forefront of research in this area for quite some time. Over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see longer driving range. We're going to see the costs come down. We're going to see the ability to recharge those batteries faster. And I think we're also going to see the batteries last longer without having to be replaced.
So, how are Mark and Di finding the electric Mini? For its first run out, Mark has taken it into town and is impressed.
I've been driving in stop-start traffic now for 17 minutes and I've not braked once, relying solely on the auto braking when you ease off the accelerator.
Electric cars don't have a traditional gearbox, so effectively drive like an automatic. But Diane has only ever driven manual cars before.
I can't get used to the fact that it breaks for me when I take my foot off. I can't do it. Oh, I want to change gear. No, I can't. I'm stuck. I'm stuck. What do I do now? Oh.
Panicking.
But before long, she is up to speed. Quite literally.
Right, put your foot down. Go on, try it.
I know, it's got so much power, hasn't it?
Sit back and relax. First charge.
And charging it up at home afterwards seems to be going pretty smoothly.
We're on.
But what if, unlike the Badens, you don't have off-street parking to fit a charger at home? As electric cars become more popular, it could be a big problem in the future. So could this be a solution? This is a street charger created by British tech startup Connected Kerb. You turn up, plug in and pay by card. They launched their new chargers here in Southwark in London and are now in the process of a nationwide rollout. So Chris, we're here in central London. What part does Connected Kerb play in people that want to own electric cars around here?
We think it's one of the solutions. We believe it's about 62% of the population doesn't have the ability to put a charger at home. And if you're not going to provide people with that convenient charging solution, you have to provide something for them where they park. Now that can either be on street in situations like this, or it could be at work, or it could be in long stay parking locations like when they go to do their shopping.
So you can see a few different types of units here. I've plugged into one there on the post and we've got quite a little discreet one there. Just talk me through them.
So we have our Armadillo here, which sits really nice and close to the pavement. That's made out of recycled truck tyres. Then we have the Gecko, which is a post or bollard mounted solution, so designed for really busy streets. And then we have another one which is designed for below ground or multi-storey car parks, which is called the Limpet, and we deploy these at scale. So wherever you park on the street, you should be able to access one of those EV charging points. If you want people to adopt EV, you need to give them confidence that they're going to be able to find a charging point wherever they are and actually be able to access it.
While the future of our charging is being considered, the National Grid has also said that measures are being taken to ensure we don't run out of electricity. But with the extra energy we'll need to use, how green are electric cars? Professor Gillian Annable from Leeds University is an expert on vehicle emissions.
There is no such thing as a zero emissions vehicle. You have to make those vehicles in the first place, so lots and lots of electricity going into the production of the vehicles, lots and lots of energy goes into the mining of all the materials that are in the vehicles. Then we've got the electricity that we have to generate to charge the batteries. And nowhere, pretty much, is electricity 100% green.
But she says it's vital we meet climate targets. And whilst there may not be a silver bullet, electric cars have a key part to play.
There's no room for scepticism on a planet that is screaming for help. We've got a serious climate emergency and we have people that are dying or dying more early than they otherwise would as a result of breathing in what cars produce at a local level. If you don't want your car use restricted down the line, then you have got to change the car that you drive, because it's one or the other.
In 2015, the government revealed plans to improve air quality in cities with clean air zones in Leeds, Birmingham, Southampton, Derby and Nottingham, due to be operational this year. Vehicles with higher emissions will be charged to enter city centres, and 23 other local authorities, including Bristol, had been considering doing the same. Leeds and Bristol have said their clean air zone plans have been shelved indefinitely for now, as air pollution levels have dropped following the pandemic, with Leeds Council saying they're concerned government funding for the scheme will be withdrawn. In the race for cleaner cars, there's also another option: hydrogen-powered vehicles. Entrepreneur Hugo Spowers is so convinced by the technology, he started making them.
The advantage of hydrogen cars over electric cars from a customer's point of view is that it doesn't really require any sort of behaviour change at all. It takes 3 minutes to fill up and it has the same sort of range of 300 miles plus as a petrol engine car.
Filling up is very similar to using a traditional filling station, only it's liquid hydrogen and not petrol coming from the pump. And whilst there are some secondary emissions linked to its production, the only emission from hydrogen vehicles is water vapour.
If we try and solve all our transport problems, 34 million cars in the UK, 1 billion cars on the planet, all with batteries, I don't believe we'll have a planet left.
But it is quite difficult to find a hydrogen car here in the UK.
Hydrogen fuel cells can be incredibly practical. Where I think fuel cells will come in is for some of the heavier goods vehicles where it is very difficult to get adequate battery power for what they have to tow, for the weights that they have to pull.
The world's first hydrogen double-decker buses will be introduced on 3 London bus routes next year to try to tackle pollution in the capital. But we don't yet have the infrastructure to support hydrogen cars.
Whereas for trucks you could have a hydrogen depot, I think for cars it's still a long way off.
Back in Leeds, Mark and Di have been using their electric car locally for a few days. Now they're heading further afield, a trip down to London.
It should take us 3 hours and 33 minutes according to Google Maps. That's obviously in a conventional petrol or diesel car.
The last time they tried to do this, it didn't work out too well, but they are feeling optimistic.
We're heading for Leicester services, which we calculated we should make on the charge.
It's a relaxing start.
It's so smooth, is this, like sitting in your armchair at home, and you're quite happy to tool on at 65, 70 miles an hour.
Unfortunately, Mark is so relaxed that he misses a turn-off, and they find they're on the A1, not the M1. With 40 miles of charge left, they decide to stop off at the next service station.
Looks like we can pay on card. Instructions you've got to nail down for. Well, you've got to use your app though. Bruce present RFID card to start. What's RFID?
Not a clue.
The charging doesn't quite go as they'd hoped. There can be big variations in how long different chargers take to charge different cars. The one they've found is one of 3,400 rapid chargers currently dotted around the country. However,
we found that it was going to take an hour to charge, so not wanting to spend that amount of time on charge at this point in the journey, we decided to unplug and move on.
But it's now 20 past 1 and we've been going 2.5 hours, haven't we? We're not even at Leicester yet.
Okay.
They've made it to another charger, but things still aren't going smoothly.
Before you plug in, you need to put your membership thing on.
Oh dear.
See,
Done it
because
wrong.
we don't know what we're doing.
We've just got 3 crosses. No, dead duck. Doesn't work.
2 of the 9 charging points don't appear to be operational. But this one is.
Right, we're on.
And this time, from having virtually no battery power left, they're charged up and on their way in 40 minutes.
The estimated arrival time is 4:45 and we left this morning at 11:15. So it'll be just 6 hours.
Which is better than last time.
It's an improvement of at least an hour.
I caught up with them the next morning.
So you two, the last time you came down to London in an electric car, you had quite an adventure. How was it this time?
Probably not as good as it could have been because we were so busy talking that I forgot to turn off onto the M18 to cut across to the M1.
But I guess that's life, isn't it?
One of the things that bugs me is you pull up at a charger and you don't know whether it's a fast charger, you don't know what it is. You know, just put a little sign on it and tell us what it is.
Do you think it's confusing?
Yes.
Yeah.
There are so many different apps. As with the chargers, they all work differently. It all needs formalising. It all needs to be like you pull up a petrol station, you know how a petrol pump works. Whereas when you pull up a charger, it's a new experience every time.
Do you think you could get used to driving an electric car?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But what do you think needs to be done if we're all going to be driving around in electric cars?
Infrastructure needs to catch up with the technology of the cars. The cars have arrived, the infrastructure is years behind. Get rid of the apps. The apps absolutely blow my mind.
So, apart from the apps, maybe a more positive experience overall this time for Mark and Di. But once they did manage to get to London, 69% of people in the AA Tonight survey felt there aren't enough charging points in the UK. And this could be especially worrying for motorway driving.
We've got more smart motorways out there without hard shoulders. And if an electric vehicle runs out of charge on a motorway without a hard shoulder, that is very problematic.
Most traditional rescue vehicles can't charge up electric cars, and the majority of electric cars can't be towed away because it could damage their motors.
So what that means is that you actually need a big truck to actually remove that vehicle. And if it's in a live lane, that can be incredibly dangerous. We've raised concerns about smart motorways anyway because there aren't enough lay-bys. Normally in a regular car, if you break down on a motorway, you can freewheel to the lay-by, if there is one, the hard shoulder, or to an emergency refuge area. In an electric vehicle, that is more difficult.
Manufacturers say they're fully invested in a zero-emissions future for cars. But the drivers need strong incentives to buy them, and a massive investment in the charging network is needed. So what is being done? I've come to find out from the man in charge, Transport Secretary Grant Shapps. And I started by asking his views on petrol and diesel cars. If this was a new technology just coming in, what would the government do?
You'd never allow it. We will look back and think, my God, we actually allowed vehicles to pump out noxious fumes and like kids to walk past to go to school and thought nothing of it.
There still is a lot of confusion amongst consumers about the switch, and one of the things that really worries people is this issue around charging, the infrastructure. Are you happy with the service that's offered out there?
First of all, some raw facts. We have more charging locations than petrol stations in this country now. On the other hand, it is still a bit too complicated, and the motorway network isn't quite where it needs to be. We have to have the really rapid charging available on motorways.
But if you do run out of charge on the motorway in an electric car, particularly in a smart motorway, you're in trouble. So will you give us a commitment that you are absolutely on top of ensuring that the service providers on the motorway are offering a service that works for any electric car user?
Yes, and talking to the rescue services, they're well on top of this as well. Usually they can get you going either by providing you enough power to get to the nearest service area, or they can tow you away. So we're very much on top of these issues.
I mean, just turning to air pollution, we've already had councils like Leeds saying that their plans for their clean air scheme may well be shelved. I mean, that's quite concerning, isn't it?
Yes, and it's not right either. They are required in different areas. Leeds, you mentioned Bristol, and elsewhere, to have clean air zones in place, and a temporary drop in traffic because of the coronavirus pandemic can't be used as a backdrop or an excuse not to carry on and clean up. In fact, we're seeing vehicle levels have recovered very fast. They're pretty much back where they were. So as a government, we'll be pushing ahead and pushing councils to enforce those clean air zones just as before.
So you're obviously an advocate of electric. You want people to move into electric cars, and they are an expensive purchase still.
There's about £2.5 billion of government support to, for example, bring down the sale price of a car. So an electric car enjoys £3,000 at the moment. That is coming down all the time over the long term, so better to get the electric car sooner to get the bigger subsidy.
What do you think the tipping point is for electric cars? Get your crystal ball out.
I think we are very, very close to it. So my guess is we will look back at 2020 and we'll remember coronavirus, but we may also remember it for the year when electric cars took off.
And the hope is that more and more drivers will get on board to help save the planet, but hopefully save some money too.
And if you'd like to see more results from our survey with the AA, please head over to our website at itv.com/tonight. Until next time, good evening and thanks for watching. Coming up next week, Angelica Bell investigates weight loss.
I've managed to lose 37 kilos, which is a good 6 stone almost, in the span of 3.5 months.